Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Paul H. Flowers Jr. He's a industry veteran and leader, excels at sales management and training at the highest levels of both public and private traded companies, Amazon best-selling author, and a man on mission. We learn from him about hidden truths behind healthcare, leadership, and money, and so much more. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my friend. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for all of our listeners for showing up.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show, Paul. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one can, win with leading with faith and winning with clarity. We'll learn all this from you. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Oh my goodness. So first and foremost, again, thank you one more time for having me on the show. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor. And a little of my history is the short and sweet version, we'll call it. I'm here in the United States. Grew up in the United States with a single parent. My father passed when I was 3, and I grew up with one sibling. Growing up within a single parent household with one other sibling that just so happens to be a sister, it was interesting, right? You've got that feminine energy over here battling each other at any given time, and then you've got me learning and growing and figuring out life. So with that, I got a chance to see the world. And again, even though it was a single parent household, it wasn't where my mother was like strapped and things like that. So we did go to like private Catholic school, got a chance to get outside of the city, visit other countries, so Mexico specifically, Dominican Republic, Haiti, there's a couple others, and we traveled, so we were exposed to a lot more. And that's one thing, just as a nugget that I'll share before I finish the story, is that exposure is everything. If you don't know that a thing exists, how can you know whether or not it's for you or not for you, right? Speaking primarily of those positive things that we'll engage in later on. So fast forward, I go to college. I'm thinking that I'm going to be a doctor. And that was really my mother's dream for me. Once I got there, 3.5 years in, I realized that this is not for me. So I stopped taking classes for my major, picked up classes in my minor, which I actually enjoyed, marketing and psychology, strangely enough. Is how to put something out there into the world, and then how to talk to the people that you're putting it out there to, and really understand what they're going through. To me, that was like the perfect mesh of, um, well, formal studies, let's put it that way. And with those formal studies, I ended up in insurance. Strange but true. So definitely not using that biological sciences degree that I started off in, though I did go back later on and get my master's in entrepreneurship. Um, the journey through formal education and getting into insurance by way of a direct sales company showed me a few things. Again, one, exposure is everything. I didn't know that there was an industry or industries, but really this one industry specifically, where you can do a thing one time and get paid over and over and over and over again. Now, again, it's not all about the money, it's about the access to freedom and the access to a different way of living by way of offering up a product or a service and then helping a person in the process and then receiving a benefit, not just once, but continuously over time. And I said, wait a second. Nobody told me that existed when I was filling out that college application. Nobody told me that existed when I was sitting in those high school classes, just trying to figure out who and what I am and what I'm going to do in college. So my piece that I'm learning now, and it's something that I want to ultimately share with youth as they are growing, is to get around as many different types of people and professions as possible so that you can know what's out there, right? Fast forward a little bit more, learn some things in the insurance field that I really liked, learned some things that I really didn't like. And the things that I really didn't like only came as a result of working with certain companies. So the company that I kept, or the companies that thought they could keep me, ultimately weren't in my best interest to represent for a number of reasons, namely for me, the moral and ethical values that they held. And I went out on my own at that point. So faith is a really, really huge component, and it just so happens to be a part of this conversation. I mean, it was a really huge component of me doing just that, stepping out on faith. And with that, Superior Insurance Advisors have done well over the years. It's led me into consulting agreements with some very notable companies here in not only the US, that would be known also worldwide. And that also, again, led me into the authoring space. So now I'd authored three best-selling, Amazon number one best-selling specifically, and the topics of risk management is the specific category. Health insurance and business insurance are a couple of those other categories where we hit number one seller shortly after the book's release. So now I'm here to not just spread a good word on the insurance field, but really spread and share with people what it takes to have that mindset, have that mentality, and really have that drive and do something with it.
Right. You focus a lot on financial and healthcare literacy. Why do you want people to pay so much of heed to that? I know it sounds obvious, but I want to hear from you. You are an expert, and you're almost to the point you say that these are the next major civil right battles. Help us also understand why do you think so?
Absolutely. So I'll talk about it in the micro and then I'll talk about it in the macro. All right. So on the micro scale, that uh, they say ignorance is bliss. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Ignorance is not only something that can cost you financially, it can actually cost you in a fatality sort of way. So, what do I mean by that? Well, here in the United States, and again, this is just a micro version of why this is such an issue, is that people pay hundreds to thousands of dollars a month for health care. Well, what do they receive when they're receiving this health care, right? Is the care really there? Well, you would think so until the access to certain doctors is limited or restricted by your network. You would think so until the medications that you need are no longer covered on that medical plan's formulary. So you have to find a way to struggle to get these life-saving meds, or you may or may not be here, right, for too long. And I say that not uh, joking about it in any way, but just impressing upon the fact that these are stories that people hear, and no one thinks will happen to them, right? So when they begin to happen in an individual's life, then that reality is there. Oh, wait a second, I've been trusting this company all these years and not really receiving the benefit, again, when it happens, but they don't understand it until it happens to them. On my side, on the insurance side, being an advisor, I see it in a broader spectrum, right? So I see it in Washington just as much as I see it in Maine, having been licensed in all 50 states. My viewpoint is a little bit different now. And when I tell you that there's some very, very significant changes coming in this space, viewers be warned. So why does it make a difference that they have this understanding? Well, if you have a health plan where you choose, let's say, a doctor to do a surgery, and on the surface, the doctor has 4.2, 4.9 star reviews on Google. That's great. But in the reality of it is there's an entirely different database that people that are not in the industry do not get to see. And it's that database that actually shows the quality score of the doctor, right? Not the popularity rating, but really the quality score. And what is a quality score? Well, that's saying based on X number of procedures that this physician has completed, what's their return rate? How many times does a patient have to follow up about this? And sometimes go through a different surgeon because the first one wasn't correct, or repeat visit to that same surgeon to fix the issue. Again, those things don't come up on Google, but they come up, and again, back end tools that they're these tools. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars, right, for these type of searches. Which it'd be nice if it were made a general, a version of that were generally available to the public, but we're just not there yet for whatever reason. So how does that then impact one's finances? Well, I mean, it should be pretty obvious, having to go back into the hospital, having to um, take time off of work. And if it's an emergency and there's not enough money saved up, people tend to put off certain medical procedures, and that ultimately has larger effects down the line. So without access to transparent healthcare is the word I'll start introducing now. Without access to that transparent healthcare, it's inevitable that the health of American citizens specifically will again continue to decline. Well, how does that impact the macro? Well, there are a lot of dollars spent on things that are brought into the country. There's a lot of dollars spent on travel out of the country. When you have a less healthy population, they tend to spend less money on those things. Less money on imported or exported goods, less money on travel, and being able to then involve themselves in other economic climates and work with other countries in that way, right? Supplying dollars, not from a need standpoint, but from a exposure standpoint in that way. Oh, there's that word exposure again. So it has a small impact here, but ultimately a global impact when people aren't truly educated on what health plans are available, ultimately how to use them, and then the bigger financial impact of making those seemingly small decisions and what they impact in a trickle effect form. Again, that ripple can go on forever.
Absolutely. So, Paul, where does one get all this financial literacy? Because everywhere, there are agents. There are every bit of thing that you read, you will find that somebody is trying to plug something into that. How should one get? Because either it should be part of the education system, or one has to do it themselves. Then where do they get started?
I
Paul?
I am so glad you brought that up. So I'll do a slight tangent before I more directly answer the question. One of the mantras that I lived by is that don't complain about a thing unless you're willing to change it. Okay. Don't complain about something unless you're willing to change it. Because we all have within us the ability to impact an industry at a small level as well as a large level. And that entirely depends on you, your drive, your desire to actually see a change. Again, one of my favorite quotes by a gentleman you may be aware of named Gandhi: be the change you wish to see in the world. Right? It's my favorite quote. I have it on little placards in my home office. I'm actually traveling right now, as well as even tattooed on me, right? I love the quote so much, I want it with me all the time. So, be the change you wish to see in the world simply says that if you're going to desire a change, then that change has to start with you. So, then to answer your question, where does one find that information out? Well, I began researching, and I advise all others to do the same thing as well. If you're working inside of a company, again, specifically here in the States, but again, the information insights are available globally. I've got 3 books that are available on Amazon currently. The Hidden Healthcare Gold Mine, Gold Mine, excuse me, my enunciation. The Hidden Healthcare Gold Mine is primarily again for employers, but as an employee to understand that there are different ways that you can actually access healthcare in the United States makes a difference, right? The second book, Risk Transfer Revolution, talks about things that are actually more available to the everyday public by way of accident policies, critical illness policies, and how those different supplemental or voluntary benefits make a difference in keeping costs low, but also keeping dollars inside the home when and if these events that when they occur. For people that own businesses and use personal lines of insurance, I've got a book out there as well for that. And so education, education, education. I can't stress it enough. You made a mention, and you said it really quickly. I don't know if individuals caught it, about the access to this and the educational system. So that is one of those big gaping holes that needs help yesterday. And this is something that's really a global epidemic, if you will, where this type of information, to me, it would make sense if people got that type of insight instead of, oh, I don't know, learning about the topography of, Southern Sudan. Okay. In other words, as people begin to get into more responsible ages in their school life, they should know about the things that are going to impact their lives going forward forever. So, having something like this implemented into the school system to me is a must for the years coming up. Well, my mantra, don't complain about things unless you're willing to change them. I actually started a nonprofit to do just that. We've got one course that is complete. The second course we're wrapping up. So once that second course is complete, we're actually going to launch the face of the site for public facing so that people can go to a non-biased place and understand about insurance, understand about the little nuances when it comes to health specifically. And over the years, we're really just going to expand that library to include those other areas of insurance that it just makes sense for people to know. So for right now, where do you go? Again, shameless self-plug. Check out the couple of books that I've written. Again, Paul H. Flowers Jr., you can search me as an author on Amazon. But more importantly, before you search and look for anything, just have that understanding that you are responsible, right? You are responsible. You're responsible for your life. You're responsible for the things that you sign up for. You're responsible for doing certain amounts of due diligence, right? You have control over your life. And until you realize that you have control over your life, it's very hard to even take the information you access and do anything with it. So that realization has to come first, that you are the person in control. And I'm speaking to the listeners out there, right, globally, wherever you are. Right, that's my message. The biggest message to you is that you have the control, you have that power, and you have that ownership over your life. So use it. Okay, and not just in the insurance space. Use it everywhere in your life. But for the topic of this conversation, that's absolutely where you want to take control and having at least the slightest understanding before enrolling in any other plan that someone's just putting out there on the table.
Absolutely, absolutely. One last question, Paul, is especially for your as a message for the young generation is that
Mm,
many a times they think when they begin to work, you are very young, you get your first check or whatever ways it is, and you feel that this is your world, you can spend it, and there is nothing, no freedom is lost. Only when you go later on in life, when you understand what financial independence and freedom is all about, what would you like to tell? A lot of youngsters also have this whole, so much of information about things around them that they either suffer from FOMO or JOMO, fear of missing out or joy of missing out. You can choose whichever. What would you like to tell them in terms of financial freedom, that it is so valuable, but unfortunately they can only know about it when you start losing that in life, and that only happens later on in life. The early you get started about that, the better it is for anyone who does that.
you are spot on. And again, the earlier the better. That is, it's kind of where I was going with that, but I'll expand on that by saying this. The earlier you realize that you're in control of your life, right? So to piggyback off the previous theme, is that yes, a person that's young and earning money, they're able to spend it. Oftentimes, maybe they don't have the responsibilities that the adults have. However, they also don't have the understanding because it's typically also not taught in the school systems that they are in control of their lives. So it's that general basic understanding of I'm responsible for my life, I'm in control of my mind, and then I'm ultimately responsible for the financial decisions that I make, that it doesn't occur to many people, oftentimes never in life. Right, let alone just when they get older and have all these responsibilities. But some people never ever get it and have that understanding. So, what I'll say to the younger generation is this: uh, act as if you are 30 years into your career and making those decisions that you would make if you were responsible for a family, if you were responsible for, again, your neighborhood, your community. Heck, if you were responsible for the people on the planet, right? How would you move differently? Would you waste money at the coffee shop every morning? Or would you notice that there's a gaping pothole in front of the store and get it fixed so no one gets hurt? Right? The mindset shifts when you realize, again, the type of impact that you as an individual can truly have. But that only comes when you realize that you're in control and you take responsibility for those outcomes. So, for our youth out there, you are in control. Start taking responsibility now so that as you grow, and for those that are, again, even more maturely into their lives, the same message applies, right? As you continue to grow, that you can not only receive the blessings that are out there for you and your family, but you can also turn around and then be a blessing to others.
Absolutely, absolutely, Paul. There is much to learn about all this from you, from your books, and also from your podcast, which I am sure is doing very, very well. A lot of people would want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Absolutely. So for the direct contact, I always recommend LinkedIn. You can also just go directly to www.paulhflowersjr.com, and that'll actually take you directly to my LinkedIn site. We're working on some of the speaking and author sites, so I just use LinkedIn right now as my most direct tool to connect. You can also go to www.paul.health, and that'll actually provide you with a few more links. It'll take you to my podcast link, which is there. It'll take you to the Amazon page for one of the books, which are there. There's three again, and there's a fourth that's actually coming out within the next week. So, little sneak peek that there is a new book on the way. And those will be the best ways to connect with me. Again, I thank you for having me here on the show. I thank everyone that actually comes and listens and learns. The best thing is just staying connected, right? I don't have anything that I'm actively promoting to sell and saying buy right now or join this course. It's really about being here and being here for other people. And that's truly what I want my purpose in life to be, is to be that resource for others that they can come to and know that they're getting good, solid insights from a person who actually cares. So again, I thank you so much for having me here to be able to share that joy and share in that care on today. And I look forward to many blessings again coming your way as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. With this,
Absolutely.
it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.